Please retrieve her weapon at this time. Do not inquire as to the rationale. Subsequent. The desert air was cleaved by the command, similar to a sword. 5 instructors relocated to the area. Without hesitation, the area encircling the woman, whom they had clandestinely christened the largest starer in the program's history. What is it? Subsequently transpired over the period of 8-3, the passage of seconds would be permanently etched into memory. It would challenge preconceived notions and diminish reputations to crumble and alter Eden Kess from an apparent and administrative error that resulted in something that the military lacked a protocol for. This is the case. The narrative of how a meek woman disregarded 5 elite soldiers. And the rationale behind the evidences emerged beneath clearance levels that do not have an official existence. Prior to our arrival, I would like to discuss something with you once you arrive, accompanied by you. Eden's-like narratives necessitate month-stow reveal. Names that have been cleansed and are absent files. Murmurs that no one wishes to reiterate, however. They are significant because they are not equivalent to strength. Consistently raise your voice. Occasionally it enters and discreetly rewrites. The regulations at Southgate, the convoy comes to a halt. Sector 9. The heat is already grasping as 17 candidates. Through the window sprepered to confront their testing grounds, the majority of them donned the same expression, tense jaws, darting. Irises, caffeine, fueled adrenaline. However, Sergeant Trey Danner, observing from a platform that is shadowed above grounds. Focusing on an anomaly, one of the arrivals did not correspond with the photos in a file. She did not wear military footwear. Rather, she donned civilian. Boots of basic gray top, tactical insignia substitution for regulatory preparation equipment. Danner, his pupils were constricted. She relocated with an unhurried assurance. Not conceit, I am not afraid, I am simply certain. Similar to an individual who had already committed the layout to memory. Personnel, visibility, and exit locations. Devil enters echo. Training like, has she already completed it? Eden is her given name. Kess. Her file was uncontaminated, excessively tidy. It had been flagged by Commander Mara Quinn earlier. Vague, with only 7 pages. Decorations are absent from the postings. However, they were interred by the time she reached the bottom. A single line had caused her epidermis to undergo a cooling process. Echo of the previous certification level black archived, she had never seen archive-attached. To a living candidate in Neverto, one putative civilian, at a later time. Quinn 3 checkpoint footages would be examined number of times. Eden didn't behave like a tourist, gazing in awe. She refrained from adhering to the group. Her iris excite lanes that are monitored, mirrored glass, blind areas, and her emergency. Contact the section has been scrubbed and redacted, and it is not vacant. Danner observed her as she entered formation. Calm, silent, and civilian on paper, but there was something within her stillness that was not appropriate. She is not green, he murmured. She is merely concealed. In grit, was unaware of the fact, but the regulations of his world had recently been altered, and the system that he believed he was in control of has already been violated. Weakness was opulence that resulted in fatalities. Furthermore, compassion that was merely a display of vulnerability. A guise. At Camp Grayson, there was insufficient space for either, and Sergeant Trey Danner guaranteed it. When the candidates convened for their initial, Danner awaited the external assessment, like a lion. On the tarmac, observing fresher prey animals stumbles into his domain. The sun was already elevated. The heat was radiated by the dunes, such as punishment and echo across a wide span. 7. The spirits of failed candidates persisted. The obstacle courses were like this, monuments, which appeared deceptively straightforward at first glance. At first inspection, but each line and corner had been designed to reveal the vanity and eliminate. Danner progressed through the formation, scanning the features of individuals. The majority appeared to be in accordance with expectations. AMA. Young, lean individual who was full of vitality and lacks an edge. Furthermore, subsequently, she appeared, her hands still at ease. Boots, civilian, were situated at her sides. However, she was now being observed by an additional entity. In addition, Rin Bishop, a private. Rin was not the one woe type that was highly expressive. Grew up in the third off-season. She desired to be heard. She would initially acquired the ability to observe. Additionally, there wasming about the woman who was standing next to her in a manner that caused her neck to HH. Initially, it was the manner in which Eden efficiently, but never hurried. She did not encounter the new protocol by accident. She did not scan for certification. She successfully navigated training facilities in the manner of an individual who would while I have been there previously. It has not been recently. Subsequently, the weapons routine was implemented. The field stripped the XM9 adaptive carbine. Thoroughly clean. Reassemble. Duration, 15 minutes. The majority of the recruits made a mistake. Numerous individuals experienced anxiety. Others grumbled their way through with misplaced assurance. Done. She approached the rifle in a manner that was consistent with was alien, acting as though it might be to shed bite. She slowly moved her palms uncertainly, but Ren observed something. Danner refrained from doing so. Her hesitation was fabricated. With practice, each component separated with ease. Her digits were aware of their destination. Photo contact where pressure is applied, not merely muscle memory and knowledge. Repetition is a product of survival. She completed in just under 6 minutes, but pretending to strain, yet remaining concealed. Ren was unable to provide an explanation for the phenomenon, but it chilled her more than it amazed her. Furthermore, Danner was unaware of it and did not wish to participate too. With each passing day, his harassment intensified, pointed, and more intimate. However, Eden refrained from doing so. Respond. Not in response to wrath or fatigue. Affirmative. Sergeant comprehended. Sergeant, no inflection. No edge. Ren had observed individuals experience fractures prior to cracks and less severe greater than this. However, Eden refrained from bending. She like a stone that has been worn flat. It absorbed it all be storms that failed to induce her to relocate. Renchi initiated the process of timing her runs. 7.45 minutesecons per mile, day after day. Like a chiming clock, like arithmetic. That is the case, Ren murmured to herself. It is not a pace. Good morning. That is the process of calibration. She refrained from doing so, know the true identity of Eden Kess, but she was beginning to comprehend what she was not. The shooting facility disclosed something that had been silently developing for days, an inconsistency that was excessively precisato occur accidentally. Actily. Sergeant Trey Danner stationed himself behind Eden Kess in a manner similar to he was participating in an audition for a military film. Arms crossed theatrical tone, prepared to scrutinize each wince and every deviation from the norm fired. His leer was not solely indicative of confidence. It was a performance that was not directed at Eden. However, at the younger recruits as well green to distinguish between cruelty and competence. Targets were set at the standard qualification distances, the type that distinguished experienced shooters from the weekend adventurers in her vicinity. Candidates struggled with the fundamentals: stance, grip, respiration, and trigger discipline. A symphony of overlooked opportunity shots and frustrated obscenities. Eden moved forward as if she were imitating a checklist. Her posture was impeccable and her accurately grasp. She elevated her adaptive XM9 rifle slowly, as if consulting a memory. She harbored feelings of distrust. The desert's humidity shone in her field of vision, causing Thea between her and the target, similar to illusion. She fired, then fired again, and once more. Each picture was meticulously spaced intentionally, as if she were attempting to avoid doing so impressed anyone during the armistice. Danner advanced with confidence, already practicing whatever degrading line that he intended to convey. Nevertheless, the instant the target returned, everything changed, altered. It was not 5 holes. Rather, it was Son, solitary, ragged opening located in the center within the crosshairs. 1.5 strikes off admission. Master Gunner, Frank Voss. The special operations personnel were instructed by a range instructor. For more than 2 decades, teams have become pallid. He had observed groupings similar to those 3 at various points in his existence. Additionally, each time the name of the gunman was ultimately redacted in records that were not intended to exist. However, Danner only observed what was advantageous to him. To observe, disregard it, or mumble some thing regarding fortune, and proceeded to depart, nevertheless maintaining the deception that he had constructed her. Afterward, hand-to-hand instruction was implemented, and that is the point at which everything began. Fracture. Danner's technique was brutal and raw. Brute strength. Dominance. His instruction was not provided through demonstrations. It is they were acts of intimidation. He was known to give candidates a hard time to the mat as if it were a message or a bleed. Delaney was Eden's partner, a former college wrestler who weighed 70 pounds sure, in the attitude that ensued from the non-existence of loss. She appeared uncertain. The maneuver she attempted, waist textbook, as Danner had demonstrated. Delaney fell with a loud thud, but he quickly recovered, nodded. Drill concludes. Quite. Confidential Wren Bishop had been observing from Thage, carefully monitoring. What she observed there was no hesitation. Refinement was the objective. Just prior to her relocation, Eden's weight wash shifted significantly. Her grasp was adjusted by millimeters. The leverage she employed rather than what Danner had instructed. It was more hygienic, more rapid, more intelligent. When Danner attempted to correct her posture by instructing her to utilize more force, less delicacy, Eden just nodded. But her nod did not convey the message, to concur. It stated, "I have previously implemented this strategy with individuals who were truly significant. On a daily basis brought new attempts to humiliate her. And on a daily basis, Eden responded with Thethy, same mechanized tranquility. Indeed, Sergeant Compred. Sergeant, it was not merely it was unclassifiable, which was unsettling. She did not exhibit any signs of wrath, weakness, or informs. She was a cloud of fog in a battlefield full of fire. And no one, not even Danner, not the recruits. Bishop did not possess. Does anyone have any notion what she was actually preparing for? The breaking point occurred during the week. 4. Major Harrow referred to it as the truth. However, exercise was well known to all personnel on the base. What it was: premeditated execution for an audience. The regulations endure for 30 seconds. In opposition to 5 of Camp Grayson's most talented athletes, you were unsuccessful. There were no appeals, and you were ejected. Transfers, merely a black stain on your record that pursued you like a phantom dot, and at the epicenter of it all was Eden Kess. She is still commonly referred to as such by the majority Caldwell, an assumed name from a more sedate era. However, individuals who were of significance were developing a growing suspicion that it was not her genuine self-name. The announcement was made subsequent to the illumination of the area, when the line was obscured by lethargy between terror and clarity. We distinguish Praters in contrast to the genuine article. Harrow informed them that tomorrow was the day. They were standing in the same spot in front of the floodlights, resembling a prophet preparing for the tempest. This is not a mere rehearsal. It is a revelation. Subsequently, he fixed his gaze on her with her. You have encountered difficulties in this regard, fundamental skills from the outset. Let us determine whether any aspects of your civilian experience at. He permitted the silence to extend. 511. No resets. No excuses. If you are still upright after 30 seconds, we will refer to it as a miracle. Then there was a gasp. Silence. As viscous as oil. This was not a test. It was a public execution that was enclosed in doctrine and delivered with a smile. However, at the moment something changed. She grinned, defiance rather than sarcasm, a silent, eerie contentment, akin to the experience of hearing a familiar song melody that was inaudible to all others. Wren Bishop, observing from the second rocher, experienced a tightening in her stomach as she continued to row. She had disregarded her instincts from the moment. She was born. Screaming ensued. They selected the incorrect item, individual, by the following morning. The news had disseminated. An explanation was discovered by soldiers from each unit to arrive. The medical professionals prepared the trauma area kits. Field commanders organized the perimeter. Commander Vexley himself demonstrated her irises were unreadable, and her arms were folded. She had been was awake all night rereading Kess's intake. 1. Line from the security clearance documentation, he continued to refuse to relinquish the object. Archival divisionally classified under Twilight Observe folder. Subsequently, the 5 crosses appeared: Shinoda, Clem, Bram, and Merrick. Each individual, handpicked. Each individual is of the highest caliber, extended casually in the manner of apex predators. Supremely certain that the result would be favorable, this decision has already been made. However, when Eden Kess stepped out of the equipment compartment, the air underwent a transformation, and her gait was altered, centered, precise, and expeditious, as opposed to trained, conditioned. And when the scars indicated that she had turned up her sleeves, everything that was not included in her dossier. Bullet shrapnel, surgical crosshatches, and traces all memories are genuine and have been healed. Commander Vexley exhaled gradually. She is not a candidate. She acknowledged that she is an antiquated entity from an activity that was not permitted in more. Major Harrow proceeded to Thelene. He is lifting his trumpet. He is not carrying any weapons. No eye gouge is permitted. Maintain a standing position. Surrender. You have called well. Do you have any final thoughts? Eden turned to confront him, and this time she did not speak quietly. She spoke in a single voice. When this is concluded, will you ultimately acknowledge you're not knowing what you were gazing at? Despite being noisier, the sound is somehow more present, as if words were being inscribed into the desert air itself. I have a single query, Sergeant Eden Kess stated, her voice maintain your composure. When this is concluded, will you ultimately acknowledge you were never aware of what Youth 5 perpetrators were observed, commenced to disseminate, establishing an informal network semicycle? Their movements are fluid and the assurance of persons who have undergone training for an extended period of time. They engaged in discussions regarding their prepare the night before, overwhelm her with velocity and angles, impact with force. Conclusion expects the process. Ensure that it is sanitary, humiliating. Sergeant Danner elevated the whistle. A single, powerful discharge, and the desert is yours. Delaney was the initial to erupt. All 230,100 pounds of him. He charged forward with the force of a tiger, freight train, shoulder retracted. Momentum was poised. If he made the connection, it was concluded prior to its commencement. However, Eden was not. She shifted precisely 8 units to the left. The final conceivable instant. This is not a retreat, a reroute. Delaney staggered past. Her hand touched the vacant space, base of his neck. A surgical procedure was performed only once. His legs failed to support him, causing him to collapse. Similar to a structure that was constructed with a substructure, he peacefully vanished. And he was found lying in the dust, gazing up at a sky that was no longer visiblescence. Subsequently, Marston and Torres emerged, flanking from either side, but Eden had they disappeared once more. Physics had betrayed them. In the middle of their sprint they collided, resulting in the collision of their extremitister weapons. Smashed by the legs as they tangled turned against themselves due to their absence barely they could raise their heads. She was already among them. A palm blow to Marston's shoulder arm is deceased. Torres is a foot away. Bradner entered the room after the knee joint was immobilized. He reached for that, which was low, quick, and calculated. Her legs, but there were no legs in the vicinity. Legs should be. She ascended above him in a manner that was moke. Elbow that connects to the root of his cranium was shaped with a frightening precision, instantaneously collapsed. In less than 20 seconds Shad passed, and only one remained. Novak, the strategist, the stoy predator, the last man standing. However, this is no longer the case. His hands trembled, his posture fluctuated. He was not gazing at a sparring match companion, but at an activity that he did not possess a term for. she was not engaged in a physical altercation. An expression. For example, violence wasa, language that was exclusively spoken by her commander Mara Quinn. Observe the proceedings with proficiency from the perimeter. The blood is drained from her face. That tattoo scarcely visible beneath Eden's folded sleeve verified all information. 6 parallelings, one of which is crossed out. Echo Division, the Phantom Unit. Operatives who were reaccords did not exist, whose activicious never made an appearance in the after-action reports. Person whose survival frequently necessitated the instead. The name of another individual was interred. She had crossed out the 7th line, which indicated that she had been assumed to be deceased. Nevertheless, she is present. Novak stood and then took a step back. He whispered another. I submit. Auditory in the stunned silence, the sound was scarcely audible. Eden did not exhibit any signs of happiness. She refrained from exulting. She systematically examined the remaining items one by one. Her touch is now gentle and clinical, ensuring that there was no irreparable harm. Exclusively, the pride had been shattered. The absence of sound began to disintegrate when Private Wren Bishop been clapping. Subsequently, the volume will increase. Additional individuals joined, and they were joined by additional individuals until the entire group range Echo 7 maintained their position by standing upright. Rather than seated not in jubilation but in acknowledgement, applauding a victory was not their action. It is they were acknowledging an accurate statement. For an extended period of time, they had been in the presence of something extraordinary and have experienced said too conventional, too arrogant, and too oblivious to observe it. Eden retrieved her towel, which was slung over her shoulder. She exited. With the same item in her purse, she possessed an unhurried grace on the day she arrived. With the exception of the present moment, all parties have ultimately what they had been witnessing. Within Eden Kess was discreetly transferred within hours, in her new position as an advanced combat instructor. Her true past remains undisclosed, and her identity ever again spoken openly. However, those 83 cons would reverberate throughout Camp Grayson for years, not as a routine, but as a redefining the true definition of what is lethal similar to.